Mackenzie critiques the Mackenzie Dick rides your favorite anime. Welcome to my review of the ancient Magus' bride, or Mahotsukai no Yome as it's also known. Quick disclaimer, I dropped the series at episode 15 out of a possible 24, so please take that into account when querying the general tone of my review. With that said, enjoy. I don't think I could get through a review for this show while keeping an entirely straight face, so you'll have to forgive me. The general setup of the show is Chise is this magical figure in bondage or slavery being shipped around in the black market. Slavery that she sold herself into, might I add. She's brought out of this imprisonment by a mysterious demonic looking mage called Elias. Long story short, Chise is trying to come to terms with her own baggage and past, as is Elias. Chise and Elias seem to be kindred spirits insofar as that Chise is running away from her traumatic past, and Elias is completely unaware of his past, so they find each other in the present. The most notable thing about the show is that she is immediately propositioned to become not only Elias' apprentice, but his bride too, an offer which she accepts immediately. I don't know whether it was just Stockholm syndrome on her part, that she becomes so reliant on him, and that she has no choice but to accept. A large part of the show just seems to be, for lack of a better description, getting consent for a choice she really has no say in anyway. The show goes on back and forth between a mythical land of dragons and Elias' own hometown, inhabited by a lot of strange creatures from myths, legends and fairy tales, with Chise deliberating over whether Elias really loves her. Unless Chise has been propositioned with a grand gesture like this in the past, I have no idea why she believes someone like Elias would love her and leave her like her own mother did. The unfortunate problem with Chise is that she really doesn't make any sort of meaningful progression in the show. She literally has no other choice available to her, so she spins her wheels deliberating on the inevitable. It's implied that she's being groomed to be this, I don't fucking know what they're grooming her to be 15 episodes in. I mean, beyond grooming her to be a mage herself and Elias' bride, is she supposed to be in some magical end war against the forces of evil? My issue with this show is that at times it can be really tender and heartfelt. It can deal deftly with themes of life and death purely because Chise, as a slave beggy, has an inherently short lifespan, and she's used as a device to explore themes of mortality. Elias too is a nice guy, and it doesn't always feel that it's quite as simple as someone buying someone out of slavery only to force them into domestic slavery. Chise has really emotional moments with a dying dragon, for example, or moments with lost loves, one of whom is being corrupted with the other soul trying to free their spirit. The types of tropes you tend to see in fantasy anime. All this, however, is undercut later with ridiculous fanservice. Sometimes fanservice might be unavoidable because the design of a character with an established reason why they dress a certain way, but it certainly breaks immersion when the show had been good until it stopped being so. This show doesn't handle fantasy in the same way a director like Guillermo del Toro handles fantasy. Like del Toro, it does deal with creatures or worlds from our fairy tales in their last gasps before fading into obscurity, or the idea of falling in love with fantastical creatures, but never capitalize on it like what del Toro's work does. The only real tangible development Chise makes towards becoming who she is meant to be, as the show implies, is when she creates her own magic wand out of some special wood, which she doesn't end up doing much with. And yes, maybe I'm being kind of dismissive about the show, but I will concede it has some positive and redeemable qualities which you might find appealing. I've been told because something is a slice of life that it's not supposed to go anywhere. That's the worst form of apologism. I've seen a healthy amount of slice of life animes and movies that have gone somewhere. They all at least have some overarching goal or plot. It's not necessarily about events, but it's about a character reaching a resolution or reconciliation through an experience. You have no idea what Chise is being groomed for, why slave beggies are so important in this universe, where she's headed apart from Elias' fucking bed. There are also tidbits of promise about where this show could go and how epic it could be, but it never quite reaches it. It misses its potential because for the most part, its setting is splendid, the music is beautiful, it had one of the best openings of that season. It has decent creature design for its genre. The show has a recurring theme of wards without their charges and lingering spirits. It explores the loneliness of living a long existence, having had the misfortune to love someone with a relatively brief lifespan. But let's forget about that. Let's talk breasts, and more fucking breasts. The best example of what I'm describing here is a subplot in the show with a succubus and an old man. A man she got hooked onto in his younger days. She can't leave him, she's almost his shadow. Our introduction to these two is her half naked wrapped around his neck. He can't see her, she can't interact with him, she knows he can't sense her at the time, but yeah, she's just introduced there wrapped around him provocatively. It looks like just another day in the life of Hugh Hefner in the Playboy Mansion. While this scenario mirrors her own with Elias, it comes off half-baked and superfluous. The show continues to take brief trips into episodic territories like this, with scenarios that speak to Chise's own domestic situation. When going into the series, what viewers really want to know is what the hell is going on with Elias, why he looks so demonic, what his backstory is, where he's from, why he needs Chise. They give just enough to keep you going and keep you wondering. It's a shame this show falls so far, because it would be so easy to dismiss it with no regret. The show is worse because it displays potential which it continually fails to meet. It's the bittersweet melancholy of the show that manipulates people into praising the show more than it deserves. The way scenes are directed, music cues tell the audience we're meant to feel sorry for some characters. I refer back to the aforementioned succubus plot, which finally concluded with the old man she was haunting almost falling ill and dying before her eyes. The tenderness of that moment was totally destroyed by her design. I've seen succubus designs in games and other fiction, but they're nowhere near as sexually provocative as that depicted in this show. They don't know when to rein it in, and I'm sorry, but fanservice seems to exist openly and unapologetically in anime, even the fetishization of underage girls. It was a shame to see a show with such promise undermined by this. I know it sounds like I make it sound like this fanservice was prevalent in the show, when it wasn't as bad as other shows, but even barring that criticism, the show just doesn't feel satisfying to watch. It has characters that walk in and out of the show like an afterthought, with no arc or development, just things that are implied. It's like a play with a fucking character walking on and off stage. One example is a priest figure that checks in on Elias. I guess the church is kinda worried about a demon fucking mage practicing and taking in a young gifted girl or some shit, but nothing is ever explored there. In the second half of the show, they do explore the fairy world and fairy characters introduced early in the show. The fairies, like every single fucking creature in the world, is drawn to slave beggies for undetermined reasons. It's implied that slave beggies are sort of commodity to these various factions, but again, it isn't explored and the show gets sidetracked with its other episodic tales and it loses focus. It does feel like everyone really is grooming her for something, but unfortunately 15 episodes in, we have no idea what that is, and no one should be expected to tolerate more episodes than is comfortable before a show gets good. In all fairness, I had a similar experience with Arslan Senki, if I'm honest. It did just enough to make you continue watching, but then kept letting me down. In the end, you don't feel you gain anything from the show and that you wasted your time. I would say I hope you enjoyed the review, but if you're a fan of the show, you probably fucking didn't. I'd struggled to score this show since it didn't finish it, and I dropped it. The most forgiving score I could give it would be a 6, which is what I gave Arslan Senki. Heaven knows I've been trying to give shows like these a chance, but you can't win them all. Thank you for watching.